Hey everybody, Matthew Coller here again, Purple Insider, and continuing the series where we put players under the microscope at the bye week, take a closer look at some of the numbers, how they've been used, what their performances are, the ones that have stood out the most. And among those is Harrison Smith. The Vikings all-pro safety has been back to his old shenanigans. If you remember last year, I'm sure you didn't forget, he was used very differently than he was in the past. He was playing most often at a free safety position as the Vikings played in a completely different style of defense than Mike Zimmer had in the past. And of course, there are always criticisms of Mike Zimmer and his coaching while he was here. But one thing you can't criticize is how well Mike Zimmer used Harrison Smith and how effective he was during Zimmer's time here, including making an All-Pro, multiple Pro Bowls, and an argument that he was among the best, maybe top 2 or 3 safeties of the entire decade when Zimmer was in charge. So last year, when he didn't have the same type of impact on the defense, there was a question of, well, has Harrison Smith started to drop off, or was it just how he was used? And I think now at the bye week, we have a pretty clear answer that his usage was just not a great fit last year. And this year, under Brian Flores, it has been a much, much better fit. Let's have a look at some of the numbers. So, how differently is he being used? So much that the head coach called it out in a press conference. Just the other day, Kevin O'Connell said,
and Harrison Smith, and I think all Vikings fans were excited probably to see, 22 down around the line of scrimmage, pressuring again, being a part of some of those things. As was I.
Which, a real acknowledgement from Kevin O'Connell that last year was not the right way to use Harrison Smith for him to have the impact that he had during the Zimmer era. And what was really noticeable, even from the beginning of training camp, was just how often he was blitzing and rushing and frustrating even his own team and the Vikings offense as he was doing all that blitzing. But also, we know that Harrison Smith is one of the smartest and most instinctual players in the NFL. So putting him in the box just makes a lot more logical sense than it does playing him back in a 2 deep and letting him read route combinations. And the Vikings have clearly agreed with this. And let's take a look at just how much. Last year, he rushed the passer only a grand total of 14 times, 14 snaps the entire season for Harrison Smith. Pretty criminal, honestly. But this year, it's been 70 so far. And unsurprisingly, he has made an impact, 3 sacks so far this year versus none last year on those 14 pass rushes. He already has more snaps up in the box this year than he did all of last year, and almost 4 times as many on the defensive line. So if you take notice, when he's on defense, you will see him creeping up to the edge rather often. And the most notable example of that was in Carolina when he gets the strip sack to put a bow on that game against Bryce Young. Those are the types of plays that he is back to making. And this usage under Brian Flores is very similar to the Zimmer era, but it's actually even more extreme. In 2017, about 6 out of 10 snaps, he was up at the line of scrimmage. This year, 64% at the line of scrimmage rather than playing back. And I'm certain that a lot of those playing back situations are in pure passing spots for the offense. But on a play-to-play basis, on regular downs, Harrison Smith is up there causing problems, rushing, confusing the opposing quarterback. Oftentimes, at his best, Smith will be up at the line of scrimmage, and at the last second, he'll drop back. He'll blitz from one side, or he'll drop back and someone will blitz from the other. There's just been a lot of confusing looks, and Harrison Smith is at the centerpiece of that. The one area that is different, and this does make sense, is that last year he had 5 interceptions. So far, he does not have any interceptions. And look, if you're playing him deep and he still is incredibly talented and an all-pro caliber player, he's going to find some way to impact the game. And that's how he did it last year with the interceptions, as opposed to this year, it's stopping the run, it's rushing after the passer, and so forth. And as far as his overall performance goes, he is grading slightly higher this year than he was last year, and those interceptions would have pushed the grade up. but the overall impact on a play-to-play basis for Harrison Smith has been wildly different. Even if the PFF grade only says he's playing a little bit better than he was, he's much more involved in the run stopping, which has been a huge improvement for the Vikings defense from last year. And he already has 10 more run stops than he had last year. So his involvement has been important there. But where I think it's the most important is what he can do from a communication standpoint and the instincts that he's allowed to play with at the line of scrimmage. And this works to a bigger trend of this defense, which is Brian Flores using players the right way. And whether we saw that in Josh Metellus or finding a way to get a rookie in as an undrafted free agent linebacker, or even the step up that we've seen from Cam Bynum as well, who has been a big time playmaker for this defense. DJ Wanham has taken another step, but we generally connect that to young players, finding their skills, developing those skills and making plays. But I think what Harrison Smith shows you is a really good example of how even a veteran player, even one of the most talented players in the NFL, can still be impacted by coaching and by scheme. And Smith is a good example of that. Now, there's another part of Harrison Smith's season that is worth bringing up, is that if he makes another Pro Bowl, he already has 6 in his career, that he would put himself in very rare air historically with Pro Bowls, and that could have an impact in how he's looked at for the Hall of Fame. Now, is it the best way to look at Pro Bowls for the Hall of Fame? Of course not. It's a flawed process for putting players in the Pro Bowl. In fact, when Harrison Smith was All-Pro in 2017, the first round of Pro Bowl voting did not have Harrison Smith in it. So that's how absurd the Pro Bowl voting can be at times. But at the end of the day, when they look at your resume to go into the Hall of Fame, that is something that's going to be factored in, and hopefully in the future, as well as what his PFF grades say, which puts him in the upper echelon of safeties during his career. So Harrison Smith's career may have been extended here by playing for Brian Flores. He admitted going into the season that he did think about potentially retiring and decided to come back in part because he was excited about playing for a more aggressive defense and what Brian Flores could bring to the table. It has paid off big time for him to have come back, and big time for the Minnesota Vikings defense, which has had a massive turnaround from where it was last year. So that's another player under the spotlight here at the bye week. Make sure you check out our longer form podcasts as well here on Purple Insider, and we will catch you next time.